For years, hardware development in the US tech industry followed a clear trajectory toward greater complexity. More specialized components, tighter integration, globalized supply chains, and finely tuned designs optimized for performance and efficiency. Products were built assuming unrestricted access to advanced components, international suppliers, and cutting-edge manufacturing processes. But that environment has changed. US export controls are now reshaping how hardware is designed, and one of the most visible outcomes is a push toward hardware simplification. Export controls introduce uncertainty into hardware planning. Restrictions on where components can be sourced, where products can be sold, and which technologies can be included make long-term roadmaps harder to execute. When access to certain chips, materials, or manufacturing partners can be restricted with little notice, complex designs become risky. The more specialized and interdependent a product is, the harder it is to adapt when a key component becomes unavailable. As a result, US tech companies are simplifying hardware designs to reduce exposure to these risks. Instead of relying on highly specialized components that may be subject to restrictions, companies are favoring more general-purpose parts that have multiple suppliers and broader availability. This reduces the chance that a single export rule can derail an entire product line. One major area affected is chip selection. Highly customized or cutting-edge chips often depend on specific fabrication processes or foreign manufacturing partners. Export controls can limit access to these technologies or restrict where finished products can be shipped. To manage this, companies are choosing chips that are easier to substitute, easier to certify, and less likely to trigger regulatory scrutiny. This often means sacrificing peak performance in favor of flexibility and compliance. Hardware simplification also helps companies manage redesign costs. When export rules change, redesigning a complex system is expensive and time-consuming. Simplified architectures are easier to modify. Fewer components mean fewer dependencies that need to be requalified, retested, or replaced. This agility is increasingly valuable in a regulatory environment that can change faster than traditional hardware development cycles. Another driver of simplification is documentation and compliance burden. Export controls require detailed reporting on components, capabilities, and end uses. Highly complex hardware makes compliance harder. Each specialized feature must be evaluated, classified, and monitored. Simpler designs reduce administrative overhead and lower the risk of accidental violations. For large tech firms shipping at scale, compliance efficiency becomes a competitive advantage. Supply chain resilience is also central to this shift. Export controls often intersect with geopolitical tensions, which can disrupt global supply chains. Hardware designs that depend on a narrow set of suppliers or regions are more vulnerable. By simplifying designs and using standardized components, companies can source parts from a wider range of suppliers and regions, reducing dependence on any single country or partner. This trend is especially visible in enterprise and industrial hardware. Customers in these markets value long-term availability and predictable support. Export controls can make certain configurations difficult to maintain over time. Simplified hardware platforms allow companies to offer consistent products across regions without constant redesigns. This stability is crucial for customers who deploy hardware for many years. Product segmentation has also changed. Instead of building one highly advanced device with region-specific restrictions layered on top, companies are designing simpler baseline platforms that can be shipped broadly, with optional modules added only where permitted. This modular approach limits regulatory exposure while preserving some flexibility. Simplification becomes a foundation for controlled customization. Engineering culture is adapting as well. Teams are being encouraged to think defensively. Designs now start with questions like, what happens if this component becomes restricted, delayed, or unavailable? Can the product still ship? Can it be modified quickly? Simpler designs provide better answers to these questions than tightly optimized, highly specialized systems. Export controls have also changed how performance is valued. In the past, maximizing capability was often the primary goal. Today, guaranteed availability and regulatory safety carry more weight. A slightly less powerful product that can be shipped globally and supported reliably is often more valuable than a cutting-edge product constrained by restrictions. There is also a time-to-market consideration. Regulatory review and compliance checks slow down launches, especially for complex hardware. Simplified designs move through approval processes faster because there is less to classify and fewer edge cases to analyze. In competitive markets, this speed matters. Importantly, hardware simplification does not mean technological regression. It reflects a shift in priorities. Companies are optimizing for resilience, adaptability, and compliance rather than absolute performance. Many simplified designs are paired with software optimization, configurability, and modular expansion to maintain competitiveness without increasing regulatory risk. This shift also affects long-term product support. When components are easier to source and replace, products can be supported longer. Export controls make it harder to guarantee long-term access to specialized parts. Simplified designs age better because they rely on components with broader, more stable supply ecosystems. From a business standpoint, export controls have made predictability more valuable than novelty. Investors, customers, and partners prefer products that can be reliably manufactured, shipped, and supported across changing regulatory landscapes. Hardware simplification helps deliver that predictability. In the broader context, this trend signals a structural change in global tech development. Hardware can no longer be designed in isolation from geopolitics and regulation. Export controls are now a permanent design constraint, not a temporary disruption. Companies that adapt their hardware strategies accordingly gain an advantage. Ultimately, US export controls are forcing hardware simplification because complexity amplifies risk in a constrained world. Simpler hardware is easier to adapt, easier to certify, easier to supply, and easier to support. It may not always win on benchmarks, but it wins on survivability. As the regulatory environment continues to evolve, hardware designed for flexibility rather than perfection will define the next phase of US tech. Simplification is no longer a compromise. It is a strategic response to a world where access, compliance, and resilience matter as much as raw capability.